Looking for the perfect food to help you survive your new hardcore world? Or maybe you're just trying to find the next crop to start a giant farm with. Either way, we've got it all right here for you in the best Minecraft farming guide. Today we'll be going over how to farm and harvest the 6 common crops in the game. We'll cover everything from how to grow potatoes and carrots to pumpkins, melons, and more. Be sure to watch all the way to the end for some super secret tips and tricks that you probably don't already know when it comes to Minecraft farming. There are 4 standard crops in Minecraft: wheat, beetroot, potatoes, and carrots. Wheat and beetroot each have a respective seed that must be planted in order to grow. Meanwhile, the potatoes and carrots act as seeds themselves, so all you need is really the plant, and you can start a whole farm. When harvested at its fully grown stage, stage 7 that is, wheat will produce 1 wheat and between 1 to 4 seeds. And that time we got lucky. Equally so, beetroots will produce 1 beet along with some seeds. Potatoes and carrots, however, will yield anywhere from 1 to 4 of their respective plants when harvested regularly. And again, we got lucky. Crops can actually be collected using a fortune tool in order to produce a bit more of their yield. For example, each potato plant yields around 3 produce per crop harvested. However, with the fortune 3 tool, you average somewhere closer to about 5.3. So you can see there, we got 5 from the second crop. Carrots also work like this. And if you try to do this on beetroots or wheat, then all you get back is extra seeds. So don't worry about wasting your time unless you just absolutely want to go bird breeding. Now, each of these plants require a light level of 9 or greater in order to grow and stay planted. So if we just take a quick pop in here in my little dark cage, no plant can be planted nor grown. I am right clicking, but it's just trying to eat the carrot instead. So yeah, make sure you light things up with the torch, glowstone, or pretty much anything that lets off a light level of at least 9 or greater. Wheat seeds, simply enough, are gathered from breaking grass. However, they can also be found inside of villages in case your world just absolutely doesn't have any. Beetroot seeds can be found either in a village farm plot already planted and ready to grow, or they can be found in varying amounts in either a dungeon, mineshaft, in-city, woodland mansion, or a wandering trader. Side note, all of these plants can actually be bought from the wandering trader for around 1 emerald. Carrots can not only be found in the world inside of structures like pillager outposts or a shipwreck, but they can also be dropped by zombie, husk, or zombie villager, with around a 0.83% chance, which is, yes, less than 1% with normal odds, or around a 1.83% chance if you have a looting 3 sword. Potatoes actually have the exact same chance from the exact same mobs and the exact same structures, so it's a bit of a copycat, if you couldn't tell. Each of these crops require a 1 by 1 by 2 space in order to grow properly. The most ideal conditions allow each plant to grow an entire cycle in 5 minutes time. So if there are 6 stages each plant must progress through to reach completion, then it takes around 30 minutes to grow a single plant from start to finish. On the other hand, in worst case conditions, a plant can take around 35 minutes to get through just 1 growth cycle. This means it would take around 210 minutes to fully grow a crop, which is around 3.5 hours, or to put it into Minecraft time, about 10.5 days, if you never sleep. This is 7 times longer than ideal conditions, and obviously not preferred. So what are ideal conditions, and how can you use them properly? Well, put simply, each plant gets a significant boost when being grown on saturated soil. Dirt can be turned into saturated soil if it has water no more than 4 blocks away. The water can either be a source block or running. So as you can see here, even though this little block here is running water, it can still saturate soil up to 4 blocks away, which can be useful if you only have 1 source of water in your world. You can still manage to make a pretty large crop farm out of it. And in case you didn't know, yes, you can grow plants on tilled soil that hasn't been saturated, but it will take significantly longer, and this gets closer to those worst case conditions that would take around 35 minutes to go through 1 cycle. But if you're farming in the nether and you don't have any other options, it'll definitely work. Another major Minecraft secret is that water can actually be moved up 1 block from the soil to give you something like this. So saturated soil can actually be produced even if the water is raised 1Y level. A lot of people don't know this, and when it comes to farming, honestly, they don't use it properly. Since water is required for farms, but is also annoying when you fall into it over and over again, and of course, whenever you come out of it, you have the small chance of breaking your crops, there are a couple ways to get the benefits of water while also being able to walk on top of it. For instance, a carpet, slab, or lily pad can be placed over or in the water, keeping you safe and dry, but your cropland nice and wet. Again, carpet's one of those lesser used ones, but if you really want it on top of your water, simply place a carpet piece beside it, and then place the one on top. You can't merely place carpet on top of water, because obviously it'll go down and in. So you have to start on the side and then plant it over. There are two remaining methods for increasing growth in your crops. One simply requires a planned method of planting, as crops actually grow faster in alternating rows. This means that if you have wheat followed by potatoes, they are not the same plant and therefore give a boost in growth time. Equally so, an empty row of saturated soil counts as being a different kind of crop, as it is, well, not a crop. So this too will boost growth. So if we're looking at this little 4x4 section here, we can tell that these four plants right here in the middle have the fastest growth time, because they are surrounded on either side by plants that are not themselves, while also being in rows and saturated soil, meaning these have about that 5-minute ideal growth time condition. The other is a bit more complicated, as it requires a bee and a proper setup. Bees will seek out nearby flowers to pollinate. Once this is done, the bee will fly back to its nest to deposit the honey. In this flight to the hive, the bee has special particles floating underneath it, showing its pollinating powers. If these particles touch your crop, they grow an entire stage instantly. And to top it off, bees can actually pollinate up to 10 crops per trip. So with each one of these trips, each of these plants gets grown a bit higher. Now that all the elements of growing crops is out of the way, let's take a look at some of the ways to automate this. First off, we have the easiest and simplest way to create an incredibly fast and efficient farm. This simple setup requires 2 observers and 1 dispenser, and as much bone meal as what you can afford. Place the dispenser facing toward where your crops will grow, and behind it place 1 observer that's facing backwards, as well as another one facing in. Now, as you can hear, the dispenser is trying to shoot out the bone meal and grow the crops as needed. Now you can simply place the seeds in your offhand if you desire, right-click, and it'll continuously grow. So if you hold down right-click and then left-click, you will continuously grow the plant and then also replant it and harvest it. Now you don't have to worry about wasting bone meal, as the dispenser actually won't use any if it can't. So as you can see here, 63, 61, and 60. And when I go to break and replant this, we now have 63, 61, and 58. Another more long-term method is to set up an entire crop field with some dispensers at the top and a collection system at the bottom. Simply load the dispensers with water buckets and give them a quick bit of redstone power, and off to the races you go. Now obviously you'd probably want this a bit bigger, and your collection system down here would probably end up with a bit more crops. But in order to return the water, simply send another redstone signal through and the buckets will reclaim the water. Then you can go back through, replant your crops, and have a happy merry day. And that pretty much sums up our 4 basic crops. Now we'll be diving into pumpkins and melons. First and foremost, how and where to find them. Both pumpkins and melons can be turned into their respective seeds, meaning you can either find the seeds themselves or a fully grown plant. Pumpkins can be turned directly into 4 seeds, meanwhile melons must be broken down into slices and then can be turned into the seeds. Pumpkin and melon seeds can actually be found in the exact same places. Those include a chest inside of dungeons, mineshafts, taiga house chests, or inside of woodland mansions. As for pumpkins themselves, they can be found inside the supply chests of shipwrecks, in woodland mansions, and pillager outposts, as well as taiga villages randomly growing in any biome that has grass. Now as for whole melons, they can be found naturally generated inside of jungle biomes, as well as piles and in some farms of savanna villages. And once again, all 4 items can of course be bought from a wandering trader for around 1 emerald. Growing conditions are exactly the same for pumpkins and melons. The only difference comes in when you harvest them, but we'll get into that in a bit. These crops don't have a typical growth pattern, as they don't simply grow the plant from the seed itself. The seed grows into a stem, which takes anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes to grow. The stem then produces either a pumpkin or a melon respectively. Once grown, if the player harvests the plant instead of the stem, then the stem will continue to produce harvestable plants given time. So if we simply wait, this will grow another pumpkin. Equally so, if we were to break this, another melon will be grown. The stems themselves, however, have a very similar growth style to that of our previous mentioned plants, meaning if it's surrounded by, well, a different style of plant or by saturated soil, it too increases its speed at which it can produce plants. Now, since pumpkins and melons automatically re-dirtify the saturated soil after they grow, this can be a bit tricky. However, if you leave the corners, it'll actually still assist the plant in growth time. Meaning that a setup something like this, where you're doing alternating rows and sort of a checkerboard pattern, is probably one of the best bang for your bucks as far as size and efficiency, grow-wise. When harvested, a pumpkin will always drop the pumpkin itself. A melon, however, will break into melon slices unless mined with a silk touch tool of any kind. So as you can see here, we got melon slice. Now, a lot of people think that an axe is the only way to increase your speed when mining melons, but I'm here to tell you that that's simply wrong. A sword will also increase the speed. Granted, not as much, and it will use up double durability from what the axe had, but it's still an excellent way if you just absolutely don't have anything else. Melons can, however, be broke with a Silk Touch axe in order to give you back the full melon, and this can be done over and over again. That pretty much sums up the background knowledge needed for pumpkins and melons, so now let's take a look at a couple of ways to farm them. While this setup may seem complicated, it's really quite simple in theory. So up top we have a system of observers and pistons. Simply put some redstone on the back of the observers so that way they can power the pistons each time they detect growth cycle. Then you have the pistons automatically break the pumpkins and melons as they grow, as you can see there. Now obviously no plants grew, but each time the sim grows itself, all of the pistons will fire. Up underneath here we have our simple collection system. Not to get into, detailed farming, but if you have a hopper minecart, it can pick up blocks through other blocks. So simply have one routed underneath your whole entire crop area. It'll pick up all the loot and bring it back to deposit it into the chest. As we can see here, we've already grown 5 pumpkins. This little system set up on the back is a great way in order to stop your minecart whenever it gets full or whenever it comes back to drop off any loads. Simply place a powered minecart rail on top of a hopper, place a comparator coming out of the hopper, powering a block, which then powers a redstone torch, which powers a block above it, powering this redstone repeater back into a block, which then, well, you guessed it, powers the rail. Once this thing is full with some kind of items, let's throw that in there for example, it will stop on the minecart rail and turn off the power until it's all deposited. Another way you can do this is simply by flicking this lever, and then when it comes back, it'll stop once more. Now this farm actually uses water on its side rather than its center, like standard crop plots. That's due to the fact that these hopper minecarts need to be only one block underneath. Simply one block underneath the blocks that they're trying to pick up from. Meaning if we were to place water somewhere in here, it could create quite a mess. So if we take this system and simply mirror it, we can actually have a farm that is 8 blocks wide and spans literally as long as you want it to. It can span the entire length of your Minecraft world if you're willing to extend it. This, of course, will give you a higher and more efficient yield as far as your pumpkins and melons go. And since our crops are checkerboarded on the inside, you guessed it, they're also growing faster. Just make sure you have enough light on the outside of your farms so they can continue to grow even at night. Well, I hope you enjoyed, and more importantly, I hope you learned something useful. If so, be sure to subscribe for more helpful knowledge in the future, and leave a like to tell the YouTube home screen gods to share this content with more less knowledgeable Minecrafters. Speaking of sharing, if you've got a friend, family, or friend's family nearby, be sure to show them this video so they too can know how to properly plant plants. I'll see you in the next video, but as for now, stay safe, stay awesome, and stay crafting.